Well, let's now talk about another industry that's affected significantly by the fall in the price of oil. One little noticed casualty for that is electric cars. Cheap petrol is bad news for the makers of electric vehicles like Tesla Motors, whose stock's fallen 31% since hitting a high in September. Its growth forecast has been revised downwards, with estimates the firm will now sell 40% fewer cars in the next 5 years. In the US alone, car sales have been quick to react to the fall in the price of gas. From May to November, sales of hybrids and electrics slumped from 4.1% of the market to just 3.2%. Whereas sales of trucks, vans and SUVs in November accounted for 55% of the market, their highest share since 2011. Well, I'm joined by Simon Dorris, motor industry consultant at Pod Research, to tell us more. Nice to see you, Simon. I mean, it was a given, wasn't it, that the electric car industry would be hit by this continuous slide in the price of oil?
Yes, it comes in the back of electric cars emerging as an attractive niche in the market, not quite a part of the mass market yet. And the change in the oil price does reduce the cost benefit of electric cars versus combustion engine alternatives. Which
part of the industry is affected most by this? Is it the hybrid vehicles or the full electric vehicles?
I think the main attraction for people buying pure electric vehicles such as the Tesla or the Nissan Leaf is the environmental impact and benefits that those cars bring. It's less about the cost benefits for those pure electric vehicles, whereas on the hybrid side, it's more driven by two competing things. The regulatory attractions of being able to avoid things like congestion charges and access to carpool lanes, but also a big factor for the hybrids is the cost saving, and that has been significantly reduced.
And in the United States, nearly the full cost saving in gas filling up your car is passed on to the consumer, not so in Europe. We're over here seeing maybe a 10% reduction in our cost of filling up our cars. So it depends where you are as well in the world, doesn't it, as to your decisions about what you're going to use to put in your car.
Yes, exactly. So with the oil price coming down by 50%, pretty much all of that reduction feeds straight through to the user in the US. So oil prices, petrol prices have come down by about the same factor there. Whereas in the UK and Europe, a lot of what we pay is actually tax, and that hasn't come down. So the actual end user impact is more like 10 or 15%. So a reduction, but far less than we're seeing in the US market.
To what extent is the falling oil price a barrier for the electric car industry in comparison to other factors like, for example, so-called range anxiety, i.e. you run out of energy before you can get to somewhere where you can plug in?
Particularly for the pure electric cars, that seems to be one of the big barriers to how people use the car. There are other challenges as well, such as access to charging points, and the infrastructure around that still not quite there yet. And also hesitations about how long the batteries themselves will last. Sometimes they have to be replaced after a few years too.
So to what extent, this trend with oil prices, will it affect car makers' decisions as well? Because there's quite a few companies now that are making hybrids, quite a few making pure electric vehicles as well now. But there's other companies like, for example, Rolls-Royce Motors. I spoke to the chief executive yesterday. They tip their toe in the market. They're not going there for now. Do you think the situation with oil prices will cause the big car makers to think again about their plans for electric vehicles?
I think there might be some tactical rephasing, but I don't think it's going to make a big difference in the long term. I think everyone expects in the car industry to make investments over the life of a technology, which can be 10, 20, 30 years. So short-term fluctuations over a couple of years here and there isn't something that's going to drive behaviour longer term.
But just briefly, for companies like Tesla, which is, the high-end market, it's expensive to buy a Tesla electric car. How will this affect that company?
So I think for Tesla, you've seen a big shift in the stock price, but I think partly that's to do with some froth coming out. There's a lot of excitement about Tesla through much of last year, and I think maybe the stock was a little bit overbought, and now we're seeing a bit of a correction to that.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, but Simon, thank you for coming in. So much to talk about. We haven't even got onto the battery story, but hey, we'll do that another day.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let's quickly squeeze in